There is a verse buried in the book of Ecclesiastes that most people read past without ever stopping to understand what it truly means, and yet, once you grasp it, you will never look at your own worry the same way again. King Solomon, the wisest man who ever lived, a man who had more wealth, more power, and more pleasure available to him than any human being in history, came to a conclusion near the end of his life that shocked everyone who heard it. He said that all his achievements, all his gold, all his conquests, were nothing more than chasing after the wind. But buried inside that same book, almost hidden between the lines of despair, Solomon left behind a single daily habit, one small, deliberate practice that he claimed was the only thing capable of bringing a person real peace in a world designed to keep them anxious. And by the end of this video, you will understand exactly what that habit is, why it works on a level most people never consider, and how you can begin practicing it before the sun sets today. Solomon did not arrive at this wisdom easily. He built palaces. He planted vineyards and gardens and orchards of every kind of fruit tree. He gathered silver and gold in quantities no king before him had ever possessed. He surrounded himself with singers, with servants, with every pleasure the human heart could desire. And when it was all finished, when he looked back at everything he had built with his own hands, he wrote something that should stop every one of us in our tracks. He said his heart took delight in all his labor, and that was his reward for all his toil. But then, almost immediately, he admitted that when he considered everything his hands had done, it was all meaningless, a chasing after the wind, and there was nothing to be gained under the sun. This is the confession of a man who had everything modern society tells us will make us happy, and he is telling us in plain language that it did not work. This is where most teachers stop the story. They leave you sitting in that despair, that heaviness, as though Solomon's final word on life was simply that nothing matters. But that is not where Ecclesiastes ends, and it is not the lesson Solomon wanted us to walk away with, because tucked into the middle chapters of this book, Solomon reveals the habit that changed everything for him. The daily discipline that took a man, drowning in existential exhaustion, and gave him back a sense of peace that his wealth never could. He writes that there is nothing better for a person than to eat and drink, and to find satisfaction in their toil. And then he adds something crucial, that this itself is a gift from the hand of God. This single shift, from grasping at outcomes to receiving each day as a gift, is the daily habit hidden in plain sight throughout the entire book. What Solomon is describing is not passivity, and it is not resignation. It is something far more disciplined than that. Every single day, Solomon is telling us to consciously release our grip on the future and instead place our full attention on the portion of life directly in front of us, the meal on the table, the work of our hands, the people beside us. This is a daily habit of surrender, practiced morning after morning, whether or not the results of your labor turn out the way you hoped. Modern psychology has a name for the opposite of what Solomon is describing. It is called rumination, the mental habit of replaying the past and rehearsing the future until anxiety takes root so deeply that a person can no longer feel present in their own life. Solomon lived 3,000 years before psychologists had a word for this pattern, yet he identified it, diagnosed it, and prescribed the cure with startling precision. Consider how radical this idea actually was for a king. Kings were expected to plan for wars, to calculate alliances, to obsess over the legacy they would leave behind. Yet Solomon, at the height of his power, is telling his readers that obsessing over legacy is exactly the trap that steals peace from a person's life. He writes that he hated all his labor in which he had toiled under the sun, because he would have to leave it to the one who comes after him. And who knows whether that person will be wise or foolish. This is a man confronting the fact that control over the future is an illusion, no matter how much power a person accumulates. And rather than letting that realization destroy him, he turned it into a daily spiritual practice. Wake up, do the work in front of you, eat the meal in front of you, and release the outcome into hands greater than your own. This is why the habit Solomon describes is not simply positive thinking, and it is not the same as modern mindfulness, stripped of its spiritual roots. Solomon repeatedly ties this daily contentment back to the hand of God. He says that when God gives a person wealth and possessions and enables them to enjoy them, to accept their lot and find joy in their toil, this is indeed a gift from God. Notice the emphasis, the ability to be present, to enjoy what is directly in front of you, without anxious grasping for more, is itself described as a divine gift, not a personality trait some people are simply born with. This means the habit is available to anyone willing to practice it, regardless of their circumstances, their income, or their natural temperament. Think about how this reshapes the way we should approach an ordinary Tuesday. Most people wake up and immediately begin mentally rehearsing the day's obligations, replaying yesterday's mistakes, or worrying about problems that may never even happen. Solomon's daily habit interrupts that pattern at its root. Before diving into tasks, he is describing a moment of conscious gratitude for the meal, the labor, and the day itself, treating each one as a gift rather than an entitlement or a burden. This reframing changes the entire emotional texture of a life. A person who views their daily bread as a gift approaches their work differently than a person who views it as merely another obligation to survive. There is also a warning embedded inside this teaching, one that Solomon does not let his readers ignore. He observes that a man may be given riches, wealth, and honor, so that he lacks nothing his soul desires, yet God does not give him the power to enjoy them, and a stranger enjoys them instead. This is Solomon describing something almost tragic, a person who has everything except the daily habit of presence and gratitude, and therefore experiences none of the peace their abundance should have provided. This is perhaps the most sobering warning in the entire book. You can have every material comfort available and still miss the one habit capable of making any of it meaningful. So how does a person actually practice this daily discipline in a modern life filled with notifications, deadlines, and endless comparison to others? The pattern Solomon lays out suggests 3 consistent movements repeated every single day. First, a conscious acknowledgement at the start of the day that today's portion, however modest, is enough and is in fact a gift rather than something owed to you. Second, full engagement with the labor or responsibility directly in front of you, without mentally living in tomorrow's uncertainties or yesterday's failures. Third, a deliberate moment of enjoyment, even a small one, a shared meal, a quiet evening, simple rest, treated as sacred rather than incidental. Solomon repeats variations of this pattern throughout Ecclesiastes precisely because he understood that peace is not a single event but a daily discipline that must be renewed morning after morning, the same way a body must be fed every single day to remain strong. What makes this teaching so urgent for us today is that our era has multiplied the very anxieties Solomon was already struggling against 3,000 years ago. We do not only worry about our own household and our own harvest, as ancient people did. We are now exposed constantly to the achievements, the vacations, and the apparent successes of people across the entire world, feeding a hunger for more that Solomon already identified as chasing after the wind. The daily habit he describes is, in many ways, more necessary now than it was in his own time, precisely because the forces pulling us toward anxious comparison have grown so much stronger. By the final chapters of the book, Solomon arrives at his true conclusion, flows directly out of it. A person who trusts that their days are held by a wisdom greater than their own is finally free to stop, grasping at control they never actually had. This is the peace Solomon spent an entire lifetime searching for through wealth, pleasure, and achievement, only to discover it was never hidden in more. It was hidden in less, in the discipline of receiving each ordinary day as enough. If you have spent years carrying the weight of worry, replaying old regrets, or anxiously grasping at a future you cannot control, Solomon's daily habit offers something rare. Not a promise that your circumstances will change, but a proven path to peace regardless of what those circumstances are. Practice it tomorrow morning. Receive the day as a gift before you do anything else, and watch how much lighter the weight on your shoulders becomes.